Oh, somebody's throwing a tantrum with Corky on the left. There's that squealing sound again. I think December struck one of the D's trying to get out of that hole. And at birth, I've mentioned that hyena cubs are fairly precocial, so well developed. Oh, who's throwing this tantrum? She's urinating right at the entrance. That's interesting. Never seen that. Amazing what you see at these hyena dens. You can see why they have to move after a while if that's the approach. But as far as I knew, I had never seen a hyena urinate at an entrance to a den like that, particularly not an adult, unless it was in fear. And I always thought that was an approach that they followed in order to keep the den sites fairly, not completely, but fairly free of parasites. Obviously for the little cubs it's a bit different. I think Corky's actually getting quite irritated with her cubs. They're throwing tantrums whenever she shifts around. Apparently, Marilyn, you said that she did this the other day. So she urinated at the den, at the Gallagher shortcut den. Fascinating. Marilyn, I had no idea they did that. I'm learning every day. In theory, they shouldn't, but it just goes to show that in theory doesn't always apply. And I think things are going to quieten down, but ooh, what's the matter, Corky? Does it look to you like she's favoring one cub over another in access to food? Surely not. The cub's now squealing and begging. Again. That's strange behavior. I'm not quite sure what the explanation for that is. Maybe that cub was just irritating her and she was disciplining, as every good mother has to do every now and again. Maybe it was nibbling at parts that didn't want to be nibbled at. Maybe it was actually suckling and chewing, which would also be exceptionally uncomfortable for her. Things seem to have settled, and just to finish off our wonderful morning spent with the hyenas, Brian wanted to know how big hyena cubs are when they're born. They are born slightly larger and, well, as I said, quite precocial, so bigger than you expect them to be. But as I said, those cubs that we just saw today were probably about 2 weeks old, that popped their heads out for the first time. I would say that hyena cubs are very, very tiny when they're born, only a couple of grams. And at most, maybe coming up to close to a kilogram, or about 2.2 pounds. I'll double check that for you though, Brian, when I have a moment. Having unfortunately never been lucky enough to see a newborn hyena, I'm not entirely sure. I will say that they have to be small enough for the mother to be able to pass them through that very strange tract birthing canal that they have. It is exceptionally narrow, far more narrow than any other mammal. And the birthing process is difficult enough that very often new mothers lose their first litter of cubs because they haven't been able to go through the labor quick enough to get the cubs out and breathing. And sometimes in extreme cases, new mothers actually die from having cubs stuck in their birth canal. So the cub has to be fairly small enough to be ejected through a very unusual birth canal. No sign of Pretty this morning. That doesn't mean she wasn't here just before we arrived. Yep. disappearing back into the den. Well, I think I'm going to leave our wonderful hyenas for now and head out in search of some other wonderful things to show you. In the meantime, while I navigate my way out, I'm going to send you back across to Steph, who has some tracks to show you.
And what looks like some good news is on the screen in front of you right now. That is the track of a female leopard. And since we definitely know it was Shadow that crossed out around about Gari Main Philemon's cut line, I can only presume that a full-grown adult female leopard track that we're seeing on Cheetah cut line, which is far in the north, is Karula. Come back from wherever she's been the last couple of days. And it's good news because it means that VM and I have got an objective to follow again. So the strategy, VM, I unfortunately have to concede defeat in my safari plan, and I have to give VM full credit. He said to me this morning we are not going to putter around, we're going to cover distance. And I have to say, well done, VM. It looks like your strategy worked.
I stole it from Brent.
VM says he learned from one of the best leopard hunters around, Brent, and I can't actually disagree with that. Brent definitely has a knack for finding cats. So what are we going to do now about these tracks? There's one of two things that we can do. The tracks are not that fresh. The tracks were made probably last night sometime, and definitely not now. So we're going to need to get along these tracks and get in front of them a little bit. There's VM's on a nice track there. You can see that the edges are a little bit blurred, and there's been a little bit of rain that we had this morning. It fell on the edges of those tracks. It's not to say that she's not around the corner, but what we are going to do is now try and get in front of the tracks and definitely drive and switch off from time to time so that we can listen to the bush around us. That's what we're going to be doing right now. So good. Let's carry on going and see what we can find. Hopefully we can pull Karula out of the bag. She is a notoriously difficult cat to track and find. In her long life here at Djuma, she has learnt almost all the tricks of the trade. And how to avoid being seen. I've seen her personally go from thicket to thicket to thicket, hunt in zigzags, turn back on herself, hide away. All of the good things. I'm sure there's an open area in front of us over here on this side, and I'm sure she's heading right there to go and have a look for some impala that sometimes frequent this area. I mentioned this morning, I'm under the impression that leopard know exactly, just the same as what we do, know exactly where impala are, and will almost walk from one impala herd to another. And we're gonna go and see what we can find. Switching off at intervals. Lael in Washington, good morning Lael, has asked, when is the end of the rain season? When can we expect there to be no more rain? At the moment there hasn't been any rain, but we've been expecting rain. And looking at these leaden skies at the moment, when can we expect the rain to go away? Well, Lael, here it'll rain between January and March is our rainy months. January and March. Of course it'll start raining in about October, September we'll get our first rain. Usually there's a few quite heavy thunder showers in November and December. But the majority of rain that we get, Lael, is in January to March. And after that, it tapers down. It's not uncommon to get rain all day and heavy rain all the way to May some years. But they would be isolated thunder showers from time to time rather than, these multi-day storms that we need so much. Alright, now there are a couple of game paths that come onto this open area. I'm just very carefully scanning underneath the trees. As I said, Karula is renowned for making it very difficult to find her. I've even watched Karula walk literally straight past some lions. Natalia in Canada has asked whether the leopard and lion here hide their kills. And yes, absolutely. Leopard do scrape vegetation over their kills, and they hoist their kills into trees. And lion, I've watched drag carcasses away and scrape vegetation over the kills in an effort, I think, to either dampen the smell somewhat or hide it from vultures, because both leopard and lion will react to vulture activity. In particular, male lion react to vulture activity. Right now, I'm going to be very careful when I exit this open area here to see whether or not there's some tracks that come out here. Karula, if it is Karula, doesn't really enjoy walking on the road all that much. She enjoys walking in the bush, and good for her, because that's usually where you find things to eat. See, there's something here. We've just got a hyena track walking down the road. Nothing that came off on the road from across the open area, so I can only presume that she's either crossed over on a hard patch directly across the road, or is walking inside here somewhere still. What we'll do now is we'll just switch off and have a listen. This is a favorite hunting spot for Karula. It's nice and thick. She does spend an extraordinary amount of time here. The bush is silent around us. No squirrels giving alarm calls, no monkeys giving alarm calls, no francolin or guinea fowl, no impala barking, no kudu barking. So we'll just resume our search. And if the odds are in our favor, we'll bump into her at some point, or something will bump into her and let us know. So what I'll do is, when I've just had a look at this block to see if I can't see where she comes out, then a good idea is to go back to where you saw the last tracks, and what we'll do is we'll take a quick walk into the bush from there. Finding leopard, I think, is a lot to do with just luck and precision guessing, as much as what it is to track and find something, unless what you do is you're very lucky, and as you walk in onto a set of tracks, there's a kill lying there, or you do hear some kudu or impala barking, generally most of the leopard that we find out here are either bumped into on the road or after a very short tracking stint, sometimes involving numerous cars, a leopard is found. I do recall at one point we were busy with the Birmingham boys, watching the Birmingham boys a couple of months back, and Karula just casually walked into the sighting and had a look at the lions and then carried on walking along through the bush. I think I was actually with VM in that sighting as well. We ended up staying with her for most of the morning, have you?
Yeah, well,
Now, the reason why I think this animal likes this area is because it's quite steep, moving down to a very well-developed drainage line which provides a lot of cover, and at the same time, there was something running inside there, let's go and have a look quickly. At the same time, will provide a decent amount of food because of the different vegetation types that you get as you go down the slope. Just having a look at these junctions. I see what was running over there. Looks like a great acre. To switch off and just have a listen. Well, Italian has asked an interesting question on, and one that comes up perennially during the marula season is, do elephants eat marulas, and do they get drunk from the alcohol that the fermenting fruit in their bellies produce? He kicks in and out of picture from time to time in some areas. Not to worry, it's one of those things that we just have to get used to out here. It's quite we use a lot of witchcraft and wizardry to get you the pictures that we do. And gaffer tape, as VM says. So to come back to the question about just to get back to the description about on whether or not elephant get drunk from eating marulas and the fermenting fruit in their belly cavities. Italian. So Jamie Ace produced a movie called Funny People, and he thought that it would be very funny to give elephants a slight drug and watch them feed on marulas at the same time, and so he doped them with a bit of a tranquilizer, which was incredibly funny at the time, and I don't think that the intention was there to create something that had such a far-reaching effect. But nevertheless, it did, and now there's this perception that elephant get drunk and baboon get drunk on fermenting marula fruit, and that's not true. The amount of marulas that elephant would have to eat for the amount of alcohol to be produced in enough quantities to make an elephant drunk would burst an elephant into a million little pieces. It would be too much. So no, the myth is not true. At least now you know where it came from as well. As you can see around us over here, this bush is very, very thick, and I think it would be a good idea to call Jamie into this area so that she can help us canvass this area. There's some squirrels calling here. We are on Hippo Pools Road at the moment. The direction of the tracks looked like they were going towards Buffelshoek Dam or towards Central Road. but without actually getting onto the tracks, it would be difficult to say. I'm just going to go around this corner a little bit, then I'm going to turn around and I'm actually going to go back to the last tracks that we saw. It always helps. Leopard tend to walk in straight vectors. Even Karula, even though she zigzags a hell of a lot, her general direction is almost always in a straight line. I think what we're going to do is get Jamie to come and give us a hand to canvass this area. I think it's going to be a good idea. Jamie, coming for a step. 2 eyes are better than one.
Oh, that's right.
4 eyes are better than one, I should say. Jamie, the last tracks of Mafazi Ingwe that we had were on Mamba Road at the junction with Cheetah Cut Line. They were mobile in a northwesterly direction away from that junction. That's affirmative. I'm going to go back there now and just get a general direction of the tracks. You wouldn't mind checking central to see if she doesn't come out there.
Okay, copy that. I'll take central.
Copy that. So there we have. You've just been privy to some game drive communication with how saying goes, and obviously having a lot more people in this area will us to uncover which direction these tracks head in, and also potentially help to find this animal. Of course, I'm just speculating that I have no way of good trackers can actually from their footprint tell you what animal
And I bumped into a very pretty roadblock. Beautiful 2 female Nyalas. Oh, bit of a fright there. And there's actually another relative of theirs that I want to show you. They're hiding behind the bushes. Now there's a beautiful male kitty. I'm hoping he's going to be obliging. It looks to me like Zeus. Those widespread horns. Where's he gone? Oh, there's 2 of them there. Oh, dense bush. Maybe see if I can get you a nice view. Nope. Just to prove to you there is a big male kudu there. Hiding his head behind the guari bush. But you might see the horns tilt forward every now and again. It's Zeus and his tightly coiled horn companion. The kudu with a sort of almost 3 twirls that are very close together. I've often seen the 2 of them associating together. It's really, really tricky for me to get you a good view. Oh, is he going to be a gentleman? Almost. Come on, boy. A bit further. There we go. You can see what I mean about how close together his horns are. It's so interesting. We've got this male with the horns very close together, and then Zeus with his horns widespread apart. Zeus is completely hidden behind the bushes. So I can't show you him. But look how magnificent this male's head of horns is. And in this light, you can even see the grooves along the top of the horns. beautiful curved and coiled, and I nearly called them antlers. That would be a terrible mistake to make. Curved and coiled horns. Now, in terms of the antelope species, this is one of the most common. Sorry, I'm shuffling through my stuff looking for something. But Sacrosanct has asked a question about a more unusual antelope, and that is the hartebeest. You were wondering if we get them in the Sabi Sands. You might be lucky to see them. I've seen Sesame, which is a relative of the hartebeest, within Kruger itself. I've yet to see a hartebeest in Kruger, but it could happen. And because Sabi Sands is open to them, you never know, you might come around the corner one day and one pops up into being. Very unusual though. I haven't seen any while I've been working at Djuma. Now, hartebeest is a relative of the wildebeest. They're all part of the same tribe, if you want to call it that, of antelope. An antelope species that is built for power and stamina and running. So the Sesame is the fastest antelope that you could see out here. The hartebeest also falls in close behind in terms of speed. So unlike the kudu that is built for hiding in dense vegetation, just like these guys are doing, the hartebeest and the Sesames are more open area antelope. I've also seen really interesting crossbreed between a Sesame and a red hartebeest. That's very unusual. Generally they stay distinct, but this one in particular, it was a closed system with a Sesame that nobody really knows where he came from. And obviously because he didn't have any mating potentials with members of his own species, he interbred with a hartebeest. That's quite unusual, but it did happen, and I've seen a very interesting combination. What I was shuffling for, and all that noise you were hearing, there it is. There we go, found it. The car's in a bit of a mess. I need to invest in a box like Steph has. Steph is a meticulously neat person. I am less so. Let me find you a nice picture for those of you unfamiliar with what a hartebeest is. And you can see what I mean about it being related to the wildebeest. It's very, very unusual to see them here. Sesames are more common. And that's because they're more arid area antelope. So they're further to the west of the country. But as far as I know, they have been recorded before in Kruger. I've never personally seen them, but that's what they look like. They're very powerful shoulders and then slightly smaller hindquarters, much like a wildebeest. I'm just trying to see. Oh, there we go. There's a nice comparison just to give you a bit of a scale. There's a person. There is a Sesame. The red hartebeest is much bigger in terms of height. It's actually an incredibly stocky, large antelope. And then the wildebeest below it. And that's just to give you a sort of a rough perspective as to scale and the animal that Sacrosanct is chatting about. Much like Blesbok and Bontebok, also relatives of the hartebeest, and more towards the western side of the country, the western areas. Oxpeckers, but I think it's just on the Nyala. So I called the kudu's horns antlers for a moment, which, as I said, was not a good mistake for a guide to make. It's one of the first things you learn, the difference between deer and antelope, and therefore horns and antlers. Tubi, you were wondering what the difference is between horns and antlers. It's actually fascinating. I always find that whole process, sorry, I'm still looking for leopard tracks in case I drive over them. The light's a bit tricky. So antlers are actually formed from hardened blood vessels and solidified blood vessels. The walls solidify as the antlers grow upwards, and they can be shed every year. Horns, on the other hand, grow up from growth plates on the top of an antelope's head, and they're bone. So it starts as sort of the way that human bones might grow at the tips. It moves upwards and it starts to lay down bone, and around it is wrapped a keratin sheath. And what that means essentially is that horns are permanent. Unless they get broken, That animal will never shed its horns seasonally, for mating seasons, anything like that. It will keep those horns for its entire life, and they will continue to grow for the antelope's entire life. The same goes for buffalo. And buffalo are actually, in terms of their relationship, they're very obviously closely related to antelope. They're hooved ruminants, they're ungulates. So they're closely related as well. So that bone continues to grow. It's living bone, so it's supplied by blood vessels. So if it does break off, there will be blood, and it does hurt the animal. I'm sure that they must feel it as pain, particularly close to the base. I imagine that that's probably the most painful place for them to break a horn. And once that is damaged, then it never grows back. And sometimes you get antelope species with slightly distorted horns, something that's gone wrong in their growth, which means they grow excuse me, there's breathed in something odd there, possibly a spider web. This morning seems to be full of them. So yes, they can grow deformed if some kind of damage is done to the little antelope's head when it's growing its horns, or born with some kind of birth defect. Just like tusks of elephants, although tusks of course are teeth, not horns. And interestingly, all the antelope species are born in the womb, and they lie flat. As soon as that little giraffe is born, including its 2-meter drop into the world, which I always imagine must come as something of a shock, those ossicones then start to stand upright and solidify, and the bone starts to be laid down around the cartilage. And it's amazing. I'll try and stop and find you a good example. Regular viewers know we play with skulls all the time, but I'd like to find you a nice example of a horn so that you can actually see the way that the keratin sheath, that's hyena, the keratin sheath is laid around the horn. And if you find a skull like that, you can actually sometimes pull the keratin sheath off the horn, and it actually creates a hollow tube. It's most impressive to see with kudu. Very difficult though. It's actually, I've personally found it quite difficult to really get that keratin sheath off intact on a big spiral board of a kudu. Obviously this has been performed on skulls I've found whilst walking around the bush. I once went on a walk, and I think it goes down in history as one of my most strenuous walks that I've ever put guests through. We went out all day. It was very hot, which I wasn't expecting. And we did a long walk. We stopped for lunch in the river, and then we walked back towards the vehicle. And that was a full day's walking at a very rapid pace. And at the time we found a kudu skull. We were busy building a collection of skulls for a display room to put up educational signs, teach people a little bit about the anatomy. And we found a perfect kudu skull, and we were as far away from the car as we could get. And we had one volunteer who offered to carry this kudu skull, and it's heavy. I mean, it's a good at least 6 kilograms, which is about 12 pounds, which is to carry, and it's awkward to carry. And I watched him struggle for ages. I still wonder whether or not, because he was quite a young guy, and there were some very pretty ladies in that walking group, I still wonder whether the determination wasn't more motivated due to their presence. But fair play to him, he carried that skull the entire way back to the car. Not easy to duck and dive through bushes with a kudu skull in your arms. And he got it back for us. And the lengths we went to, Emma and myself, in building that skull display room was quite intense. Hello, Nyala. Look at you, with your horns almost touching. I've seen Nyala bulls before with horns that have grown to actually touch completely at the tips. So the closest relative of the kudu, and probably if you look back they will have a common ancestor along with the bushbuck. And those three antelope species, the bushbuck, the nyala and the kudu, all have evolved to occupy very, very similar niches out here. These beautiful drainage line environments provide for a perfect spot for all three species. Don't see nearly as many bushbuck as I would like. They're definitely one of my favorite antelope, and we hardly ever see them. Luckily for us, we've got three of them that live around the camp that we live in. Very stately. And I'm fairly certain that nyala bulls must be one of the most striking antelope, with their bright white face dots, the white mane, and then those tan stockings, and of course the fluffiness. I want to show you something quickly. Sorry, I know he's beautiful. I'll get to him in a moment. I want to show you how easy it is to walk into buffalo out here, because it's only because I heard him that I saw him. He's on the other side of me. This is why you need to walk very carefully out here. Isn't the environment you'd necessarily expect to see a buffalo in. You see him from there, Tibbs. And he's come out nicely now, but he was incredibly well hidden in the vegetation when I first spotted him. It was only because he was walking through and making a sound that I actually saw him. Hello, gentlemen. And all of us are very careful when we wander around these sections of drainage lines, because at the moment they're the one place where the buffalo can come and find water wallows or mud wallows to spend their day in. The nice thing about getting to know an area as well as we all know Djuma is you get to memorize where all of the pans and puddles are. So if it rains, you know where to start looking out for buffalo bulls. They tend to be the kind of short-tempered gentleman that really doesn't appreciate your sudden appearance if you're on foot. They give you a very, very distinctive look down their noses. Here we go, just showing you how they managed to, I mean, he's close, he's about 30 meters away. Just showing you how they can sneak up on you if you're not paying attention. Much like leopards could disappear onto the top of termite mounds, for those of you who were watching yesterday's sunset safari. That definitely goes down as one of my not one of my finest moments, let's put it that way. There's nothing like looking for a leopard and then realizing it's right above your head, staring down at you, thinking you're an idiot. There's another beautiful nyala bull here. Sorry, boy. Gave him a bit of a fright. No sign of my pregnant kudu this morning. Must be the first morning that I haven't seen them. Of course, I'm always on the lookout for different and fascinating parts of the animal's anatomy. And one of those has included a lot of time spent reconstructing a lion's paw from a carcass that we found, a lion that was killed in a fight between males. And James Richards, you were wondering if the big cats shed their claw sheaths, and if I've ever found one. They don't shed their claw sheaths, although you'll probably find that there's definitely a level of a replacement to them. So you can just watch the ladies cross the road. You can see that size difference. Oh no, she didn't stick around to show us the size difference. She took one look at him advancing and dashed away. So James, they don't, as far as I know, they don't really shed or replace either claws or claw sheaths, but they do constantly grow, so they need sort of constant maintenance. The claw sheaths will rub smooth within, so for new viewers, the way that lion's paws are constructed, within the claws themselves, so let's say this is the dew claw, it's not the best explanation, but it's got a nice tendon around it, and then the claw itself is surrounded by a sheath made of soft cartilage, and it is quite soft and very, very smooth on the inside, and it allows that claw to move up and down through the sheath. I wish I had my book with a diagram with it, but unfortunately I don't, so you'll just have to imagine that my thumb is a claw, and all controlled by tendinous movements within the paw itself. So those claws constantly grow, and so do the sheaths, but the sheaths are rubbed down by the movement of the claw in and out of the sheath, if that makes sense. So the inside is rubbed away, and the external is kept living just as all connective tissue is constantly replaced. So your blood vessels, your mucous membranes, everything like that is replaced, even your skin, constantly. So it works the same way with the sheath. The lions have to do constant, lions and leopards do a fair amount of maintenance, so they make sure that they lick their claws so that they don't get dirt stuck within the sheath itself and get their claws jammed or stuck out or anything like that. But I have, from that lion corpse that I was telling you about, I have actually collected the claw sheaths before, and we reconstructed them and we put them back together so that we could create the claw sliding in and out. Fascinating process. That dew claw, the root, I suppose you could call it the root of the dew claw, is so big. I mean, the dew claw itself of a male lion is about this big. You know, it curves right around and it's thick, thick, thick in size. And then it has a root in the back that sits in the sheath itself. They're incredible things. And teeth, my word. The roots of those enormous canines are actually bigger than the tooth itself, the part that sticks out. So lion anatomy is fascinating. Big cat anatomy is incredible. The process of obtaining it, though, can be a slightly smelly one. These two hornbills courting. Hopefully they decide to stick around so that we can show you. Because we've got a really nice comparison of male and female there. Male on the left. Oh, no, hold on. Yeah, I think male on the left. Oh, no, male on the right, maybe. His beak's slightly broader. Aww. Hey, you two. Joys of filming live wildlife, particularly feathered ones. Somehow Steph manages to get the birds to sit still. He manages to get birds on camera far more efficiently than I've ever managed to. It's a skill that he has. And the wonderful Steph, by the way, just to update you, is wondering about trying to track down Karula. I'm going to try and help him from this side. Nyala's everywhere. Oh, little one. Oh, you so cute. I have to stop here because I'm going to, although they're relaxing a little bit, maybe I can go forward. Oh, that's a tiny baby. It is the season of pregnancies and babies. I'm going to go forward a little bit. You guys be okay with that? Creep up on it, move my rain cover away from the microphone so that I can keep my voice down and whisper into it. Cute. Tiny little thing, only a couple of weeks old. awesome. Such beautiful creatures. Alright. Well, our Nyala are all moving off into the thick vegetation. There's another baby peeking out at us. And Steph is back on Rusty and ready to give you an update. So let's hear what he has to say.
Well, welcome back with us. We seem to have gotten over our little 1 or 2 gremlins. I also went for a bit of a walk on Karula's or on this female leopard's tracks. Now, I expected this female to come out of the bush on our right hand side, somewhere here, and on not even one of the game trails that I had a look at, we could see a track. So I came in through here. I did a quick reconnoiter of all the game trails that I could find inside this block. About 100 meters in radius from where the last tracks were, and I couldn't find a single track. She hasn't walked on any of the game trails. Now, that is not unusual for Karula. She does that. And then she'll be staring at you from underneath the bush here next to the road somewhere. Still not uncommon. I'm not too concerned. The trick now is just to drive, find out where she did cross the road, get a direction of those tracks, and then switch off and listen. She will bump into something that gives us a clue as to where she is at some point. Or one of the colleagues that I've called into this area, I've passed Andrew, and I'm sure Jamie is also somewhere here, will bump into some further sign of her. We're going to carry on going down in the direction of her last track. That's always the best bet. We're going to go down in the direction of her last track. We're going to head out to Buffelshoek Dam. That's the exact, if I were to draw a line, that is exactly where she was heading, and see if maybe we can bump into something more along the way. Starting to heat up. It was getting a bit chilly a little bit earlier, probably about half an hour ago. The temperature definitely was dropping. The clouds were also dropping. But I see now that has passed, and as you can see, the clouds are quite high up in the sky. No chance of rain just yet. Tom in Dallas has asked, would the straight line movement or habit of that leopard have anything to do with wind direction? And Tom, yes and no. I've seen leopard hunt into the wind, full on in the face, and I've also seen them have complete disregard for wind. I think it depends on what they're busy doing that day. If they're busy marking territory and they're needing to demarcate boundaries, then they absolutely don't worry too much about wind. But if they are hunting, I have seen them hunt into the wind. It all depends on what this female was doing. Difficult to judge from her tracks after only having seen 4 sets of tracks, 4 footprints, as to what her intentions were. And the fact that she's not walking on a road demarcating territory would suggest that she's busy hunting at the moment. Although, as I said, this leopard is a sneaky cat. She's very clever, and she's very experienced, and she knows how to avoid people, that's for sure. So, if it is Karula, what I'm looking at is thicket to thicket. I definitely have picked up a habit of hers, and that is she doesn't walk in the open very much. She doesn't walk on game paths. She doesn't enjoy walking on roads. But what she does enjoy do is walking from thicket to thicket. And that in itself is something quite interesting. Leopard have the most amazing personalities, you know. I still am... I don't understand how people can hunt a leopard if they understand even a fraction about that animal's characteristics. The way that each of them have their own personalities is just, for me, a constant source of surprise. We find that they learn from their experiences. They're incredibly adaptable cats. So on an individual basis, although they do share common traits, on an individual basis, leopard are able to adapt to their environment, in their specific environment, in their area that they're in. And so you get leopards having characters, or having characters, I should say. I don't want to put too much of a human trait on it, but it's difficult not to. We have some buffalo here. Now, while we normally just bypass two old bulls like this, what it does give me the chance to do is stop the car and listen. And while I'm busy yakking to you about the buffalo, it'll give me a chance to listen to the bush around us and hopefully pick up some telltale signs as to where this animal is. Here you're looking at an adult bull Cape buffalo. Now, he would be part of a herd. At the moment, it's just him and a friend, him and another male buffalo together in what's called a bachelor herd. Bachelor herds are associated to breeding herds, and breeding herds move a lot more than these guys do. These guys are big. You're looking at 1,500 pound or 800 kilogram, and they don't really need to. There comes another one out of the bushes. It makes 3. They don't really need to keep moving as much as what the herds do. The herds with the females and the youngsters attract a lot of attention from predators, and for that reason they move a lot. These male buffalo don't see the need. Now, when the herd is back where they are, they will join the herd for short spaces of time, compete for females that are in estrus, and hopefully get their genes into the gene pool of the herd at large. Go forward a little bit. See if we can see. Phantom TV has asked a nice question about buffaloes. If they use their horn tips for protection, if their horn tips break off, how long does it take for them to grow back? And the quick and easy answer for you is that they don't grow back. Horns, unlike antlers, don't fall off and are not replaced at the beginning of a season. These are permanent fixtures with a bony core, keratin sheath with a bony core. And if one breaks off or is injured in any way, that's unfortunately for that buffalo. You can see this buffalo that VM's having a look at now has a horn deformity. The horn bed or the horn itself must have been damaged at a young age, and you can see that the horn on the left-hand side of your right-hand side of your screen is not quite as symmetrical as the other one. And in contrast to most buffalo who have pretty symmetrical horns, he's now standing out with a bit of an anomaly. You can see that buffalo has symmetrical horns. These are not the oldest or the biggest buffalo that I've seen. A couple of days ago, I think it was myself and VM or myself and Brian at Buffelshoek Dam, we managed to see a group of buffalo that were just absolute monsters. But they are full grown, and at least the one on the left definitely isn't a youngster anymore. David has just asked a question straight out of North America, where the popular sport of bull riding takes place. Or rodeo, I think is what you call it. And he wanted to know, do buffalo bulls buck similar to your rodeo bulls do if a lion had to jump onto their back? David, as far as I'm, yes, the very simple answer is yes. I've seen them buck, and they do jump and kick and spin around and do a whole bunch of things. It's not quite as vigorous as your North American rodeos are, or your rodeo bulls are, but I almost want to say it's because they don't have that strap. Obviously, they don't have that strap tied around their middle, and they haven't been bred specifically for rodeoing. But absolutely, they possess the ability to buck around, spin, kick out, lash out, thrash their horns. You're just going to get me trying to get out of the way. Well, since I can't get out of the way, I'll rather move the car. Just wasn't enough space for me to move out of the way over there. Now, there are bigger bulls that have been bred for beef production in the world definitely are heavier. I know a Brahman bull is almost twice as heavy as a buffalo bull. However, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that a domesticated cow or cattle are about as close to buffalo as what wolves are to German shepherds. Buffalo live in very complex, highly social groups and herds with one another. They are clever. They are dangerous. And look at that buffalo. Yeah, straight in the face. Have a look at that eye there. VM getting right up and tight. Was one of Africa's most dangerous of the Big Five. And from one member of the Big Five to another, Jamie has just bumped into something she wants to show you.
We've just come through and bumped into a herd of elephants. I'm giving them a lot of personal space. They are very stressed about something. And I'm not sure if it doesn't mean that there's a big bull somewhere harassing them. They're all starting to come down. Oh, here we go, some in the road. They're all secreting heavily from their temporal glands. And the whole herd is starting to move through. Everybody is exhibiting considerable signs of stress. I'm keeping my voice down, and actually I'm going to, because the rest of the herd is coming up to my left, I'm going to back up to give them some space. Sometimes you just get a feeling for the way that elephants are feeling as well. And there's something not right with this herd. They're unhappy about something. It's probably a big male. Stop here. There's a big old female coming through. Something's really upset them. Hello, big girls. Right, guys. Yep, there comes the male. I'm actually going to go forward so that I'm out of their way completely. Just give them a little bit of personal space. And I can actually sense it. I don't know what it is. It must be some kind of scent that we're familiar with. And the fact that I can see it in their body language. But you can actually sense that something is really upset them. I'll still get a view of them. I just want to turn around. I would rather be on this side of the herd as they go across the road than in their way. And as we've mentioned quite a few times, the elephants at the moment, because of this, particularly we think because of the drought, are a bit more unsettled than usual. So we're giving them plenty of space. You can imagine they're feeling stressed because they're not getting enough nutrition, stressed because they have to walk huge distances in order to find water, far further than they've usually had to. And stressed recently in Djuma because there's been a couple of really large bulls that have been with the herds constantly. I'm not sure if it's because the cows are coming into estrus, or quite a few cows are coming into estrus. They've just been a little bit unsettled. definitely noticed an increase in their level of tensions. Which is why I'm just giving them and myself plenty of personal space. Some big elephants coming through. Big female. Okay, here's a nice place for us to stop. The rest of the herd is going to slowly move in front of us, but we've got a view of this female on this side. Or we did before she decided to start walking away. I wanted to just show you don't you start now. Hello, boy. Right. Hello, little boy. Coming up to investigate us. Quite a young male. But I think probably the reason for this herd's disgruntled nature. Nice and relaxed, though. Hello, big boy. Oh, there's actually a female with a collar in this herd as well. I'll see if we get a view of her. We'll just let them move through. Here comes this nice big herd. Now, apparently this herd has been seen a couple of times before with the female with a collar, and that they generally are a bit unsettled. I don't know what it is in terms of their aspect of their personality. It's interesting that we're noticing a pattern with this particular herd. They are uncomfortable. They're perfectly relaxed with us. They know that we're here. But there's just a sense in their body language of discomfort, even though they've stopped to feed. And I don't know if it's because maybe one of the females is constantly coming into estrus or because they're being harassed. I don't see a huge bull. I mean, the male that walked in front of us was still quite young. I think probably somewhere in the region of about 25. So not the sort of 30-year-old range that usually causes the female's distress. Now, many of you will have seen and discussed the incredible footage that we managed to get on our virtual reality rig. And just to provide a little bit of context to that particular sighting, it was with VM on the back. We were doing a drive. I can't remember exactly when we were doing it. We were off air at the time, and we came across two bulls, perfectly peaceful, feeding quite happily, and I was still on the road and a good 50 meters from him when I stopped and turned off my engine. And he took one look at us and just decided, and I thought initially, because his body language was so peaceful, he was just feeding, and then he decided all of a sudden he didn't appreciate us being there. And the situation changed very, very quickly and was an important reminder of our place within their world. Now, I don't like shouting at elephants. I don't like doing it. It's their home. And taking that stern tone of voice, I'm not saying that we did anything wrong in that situation. Instinct told me how to handle it, and we came away from it absolutely fine. I also don't think he in any way was going to harm us. At no point in that particular sighting did I feel as though we were in any danger until he decided to push the tree over VM, at which point it was time to leave. Now, different guides handle situations like that differently. And had I known how he was going to behave, I probably wouldn't have stopped next to him, and I probably would not have stayed when he started approaching. But as it was, every indication in his body language to me seemed to suggest a perfectly peaceful and curious big bull elephant. And usually at that size, they are incredibly comfortable in their own skin and usually incredibly relaxed around vehicle. You've heard Brent speak about it a lot, about how much he loves spending time with those big male elephants. I don't know why his tusks are broken. Both of them were broken. They were badly damaged, and I don't know if they're causing him any additional pain, which might be making him grumpier. We have read lots of cases of elephants having abscesses sitting in the top of their tusk, which makes them just a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit grumpy. I don't know if that's the reason. I have no idea. I have no idea what is in his background, We know that something similar happened with another large vehicle, and I'm sure many of you have seen that video as well. Also went from peacefully eating to approaching the vehicle in an angry way. They're drought stressed, and there's probably more to his background than we realize. Important lesson in the fact that you never exactly know. You must never get blasé about the way that you read and interpret a situation, because I really thought by the way he was feeding, he was relaxed. But then again, I think he was coming to intimidate us. I don't think he was ever going to do us serious harm, until he decided that actually maybe the tree would look better on top of us rather than next to us. At which point the sighting became very interesting. But we never go out, obviously. You all know this, but for new viewers, we never ever go out deliberately looking for that kind of footage. It was completely accidental. It was purely by chance that we happened to go around this corner and stop at that elephant. And I certainly would not care to repeat that, but it will happen. It happens as you spend more time in the bush. And I've often spoken before about how I speak to elephants. I'm not the only guide who does it. I know lots of people who do, and I've heard lots of stories about people claiming that their voice calms the eddies down. I've always found that experience, and Shell, you noticed in that video, obviously I talked constantly through it to that elephant. Whether or not it was my voice calming him down or not, I don't know. I just feel instinctively with elephants that they don't necessarily understand what you're saying, but they understand your tone. And you obviously, when you were watching that video, you heard how I raised my voice. I don't like doing that. This is their home, and we are guests in their home. You know, it's like walking into someone's house and shouting at them. But sometimes you have to do it, or at least in that situation, I felt it was the correct line of response. The bird's going into some very thick, dense bush here, but we can finish chatting a little bit about that particular sighting. So it makes for an incredible experience and a good way of demonstrating how phenomenal the possibilities are with a virtual reality rig. VM was an absolute star. At no point did he stop filming during that entire sighting, not even when the elephant sprayed a combination of dirt and snot on us, which was exceptionally pleasant. He sat absolutely still and in fact filmed the whole thing, as far as I know. So the ladies in FC had a preview of what was going on. A very interesting sighting. I would not describe it as exciting, and one that I learned a great deal from, and one that we spent a considerable period of time afterwards, James, Steph, and myself, the three guides who were present after that sighting, talking through it and discussing the various responses and how each person might have handled that situation and what we would have done. Obviously, I know what I would have done because I did it, but for James and Steph as well. And I learned a great deal from their analysis of the situation as well as my own instincts at that particular time. It's always interesting to see how you respond to particular situations like that, but obviously not a situation you ever seek to deliberately provoke or approach. It just was something that happened. It does happen. The more time you spend out in the bush, the more you encounter different characters, and the more you find, for example, that there is one elephant in particular that was grumpy. The next day I bumped into him on this road, actually, in the sighting with a breeding herd, and I actually drove straight past him, and then when he moved up the road behind us, I moved out of his way completely. I just preferred to give him as much personal space as possible rather than spending any or too much time in his company. You know, if your company is not appreciated, you don't try and force it on people, so we certainly don't try and force it on the animals. Bye-bye, Elise. I'm obviously not going to follow them, not with this particular herd. One of them is a prolapsed uterus, by the way. I forgot to mention that earlier. It looked to me like she's prolapsed. No. Oh, that is so frustrating. How can I get a view for you? Tibbs, the mongoose on that termite mound. Can you see if you can maybe get a view of them? Really tricky. They're right at the back. At the termite mound at the back, dashing up and down. I think they're banded mongoose. Yes, that's exactly right. Let's see if they come back out again. Ah, they're banded mongoose. Hey! I think. Pretty sure it's really hard to see. Yeah, they look like banded to me. How cool is that? When last did you see banded mongoose on the live safari? You can see the size difference as they dash about. Awesome! That's the fourth species of mongoose I've managed to put on camera. We've managed white-tailed, dwarf, slender, and now banded. I knew there was a group of banded mongoose living somewhere here. Thank you, Tibbs. I know it's not the best visual, but the banded mongoose around here are so shy. That's the first time I've managed to get them on camera. Awesome. Awesome stuff. Hey. So exciting. Well, now we know. How cool is that? Hey, I'm more excited about the banded mongoose than I have been about pretty much anything else. Well, no, that's not true because we had that wonderful cub sighting this morning. Thank you all for your words of encouragement about that elephant sighting. As I said, I handled it instinctively as I wanted to in that situation. Obviously, our priority is to keep ourselves safe, particularly for me to keep VM safe in the back, since he has absolutely no control over the situation himself. And again, it's not something to be glorified at all. It was not a sighting that I would ever have intended, or a position I would ever have intended to get myself into. It's something that happened, and I dealt with it as felt right at that particular time, and I learned a great deal from it. I really don't like shouting at elephants, and I certainly wouldn't care to repeat it. It just is one of those things that happens. Okay, I'm going to send you back across to Steph. I'm so excited about my banded mongoose. It's epic. And then I'm going to go and see if I can find some dung so that I can make good on my promises to Eric for the last few moments of our sunrise safari. Cheers, guys.
Welcome back with us, and myself and VM have just been quartering the area around where we saw the last tracks of that female leopard very, very carefully, stopping, listening. There's been a fair amount of chit-chat going on as well, of course, but for the most part, we're still trying to stay hot on the spoor of these tracks, of the follow through of these tracks, at least anyway, and see if we can maybe squeeze in a sighting before we say goodbye to you in the next couple of minutes, or at least get ourselves a head start for this afternoon. Now we're around the Buffelshoek Dam area. It's actually it's much greener than I thought it was going to be here. The grass is flushed underneath the trees, and I think what's happened is that the overcast weather combined with the relative tree cover here has allowed a lot of the water to seep very successfully into the ground. And we're seeing all sorts: waterbuck, impala, buffalo, lots of signs of elephant here. So there's a lot of life here. I haven't seen a lot of... There's a waterbuck here, speak of the proverbial. Nice huge male. See if we can get forward a little bit. So rare question to get. Zoe, all the way from Australia, has asked if we get any roan antelope. Didn't enjoy the headlights or the camera, but there you go, it's at least stopped over there. The roan antelope are supposed to occur here, Zoe, but we don't find them often. Roan are one of the rarest antelope in the Kruger National Park. As far as I know, there's only about, I think, 150 to 300. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's between 150 and 300 individuals of roan in the entire park. and it's a big park. Whereas roan are fairly common in northern Zambia. I've seen lots of roan in northern Botswana and in northwestern Zambia in a place called the Kafue National Park. I saw more roan there than I saw kudu, to be quite honest. But here, roan are fairly so they're difficult to find. They're not incredibly difficult antelope to find. They enjoy grassy pastures, and so looking for them is a little bit easier than, say, looking for this leopard that we're battling with at the moment. But with only so few individuals, it really is quite tough to see a roan. In all my years in the Kruger, I've never seen one. So just coming back to that waterbuck, big male waterbuck, he ran away from us because A, we caught him unawares when we came around the corner, and B, we turned our vehicle to face him. So we had both headlights and the camera on the back, which for animals who don't remember cars or have shortish memory spans like most antelope do, it can be a bit disconcerting. As you see, all he did was he created some distance, and then he stopped and he turned around at what he felt was a safe distance, and then carried on feeding. So no harm done. And it also gave us a chance to switch off the car and listen. That's obviously how I find leopard primarily, is using my ears. You would have noticed, for those of you who follow the show religiously, quite often we find leopard through the alarm calls of other animals. In particular, when we've been doing walks, it's so nice when you're on foot because you can hear the bush so much better. But we're quite often able to update the other safari drives on clues. Right, so we got some male impala here off to our left. We'll stop and have a look at them as well. This again just gives us that little bit of break from the engine noise here to listen to the bush around us. My gut feels telling me that this leopard is not this far north, although you never quite know with Kula. If it is her, she moves throughout the day. Doesn't matter whether it's hot or cold, we've seen her moving all the time. And here we have a bachelor herd of impala and a zebra. Just a solitary zebra actually, which is quite rare. Position here where we can see these impala. It can be, there you go. Not sticking around too long. That's fine. It just gives us just some more time. See how camouflaged they actually are. There's a lot more impala standing there than what you think there are. All males. It's a bachelor herd. Not uncommon to see. Not a common sight to see this time of the season. Generally speaking, the rams are with the herds, more eyes and more ears around the babies. But I think with competition for food resources being relatively fierce this year because of the drought, you probably find that the dominant ram has, in favor of his harem of females and himself, made sure that these bachelor herds don't come anywhere close to him. And from impala, and VM has just seen a hornbill duck into a nest over here. Let's see if it comes out. There we go. Grey hornbill. And looking at the nest now, VM. So hornbills, why hornbill nests are so interesting is that the females, they go into the nest, They will then pull out all their primary feathers, and they will lose the ability to fly. And then what they'll do is they will mud up the entrance. Them and the male bird will mud up the entrance, and then just her beak sticks out. So she corks up the entrance with her body and her beak. And then the male feeds her and feeds the chicks, and as her feathers grow back, so the babies fledge, and then they all break out of the nest together and fly away. Well, on that note, Jamie has got a bit of a demonstration for you, and I'm sure she's dying to tell you what it is before we reach the end of the show. So without further ado, we're going to go through to Jamie and see you in a bit.
So, yesterday afternoon, Eric, who's one of our viewers, recommended a type of game where we blindfold ourselves. So the presenters blindfold themselves and have a random sort of sample of dung with which to try and guess at which animal it comes from, either through taste or through feel. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had time to arrange that, and I certainly didn't get around to challenging Steph to that particular aspect of the competition. Not sure how he would have responded, but I suppose Steph's always a good sport, so I think he would have been willing to play. I will say, just on a serious note, hygienically, and I'm quite relaxed about that sort of thing, and I've grown up doing all kinds of strange things, but I would definitely avoid taste testing things like elephant dung and buffalo dung, particularly wet, fresh stuff. You do run the risk, although it is herbivore dung, so we're quite comfortable playing with it with our hands, do run the risk of picking up some kind of internal parasite. But I want to show you something. This is for maybe new viewers who are unfamiliar. Relocate myself outside of the vehicle. I don't think Tebs would appreciate it if I stayed with him. So it's something that we played as children, and we still play as adults occasionally. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. And it involves the tasting aspect of Eric's suggestion. So I have a random sample of dung that I've collected. I'll leave it to you as to whether or not you think that I walk around with pockets full of dung on a regular day or not. That's up to you to decide. Now, the part of this game is essentially you pop it in your mouth and you spit it as far as you can. And the person who spits it the furthest wins. Now, people have different techniques. Some people do a bit of a run-up. You go backwards, you launch yourself forwards. Some people like different types of dung. Me, personally, I'm an impala dung type of girl. I like it when the dung pieces are quite tiny. Makes it much easier. And it makes for an incredibly fun game. Now, I would like to challenge Steph, but I actually think I would lose. I happen to be, but don't tell anyone, I happen to be quite appalling at what we call boktrolspoeg, or dung spitting. Hey, that was fairly accurate. Sorry, Tebs, that was not aimed at you. I did manage to hit Tebs on the fingers. I was aiming for the camera, but I managed to hit Tebs on the finger. I'm quite impressed with my accuracy. Now, I've played the game before with good friends that takes it a step further, and that's to see if you can catch the dung in your mouth and then spit it back at them. Now, that being said, I've grown up doing that. It has never once made me sick. I wouldn't suggest swallowing it. And just as the all-important disclaimer, maybe not something to be done with small children because it is a choking hazard. I have actually choked before, taking a deep breath in to spit further and actually choked on the dung. So you don't really want to do that. You want to be careful in that particular respect. So it is highly entertaining to watch, and you don't want to chew. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had as much fun as I did. It's been a wonderful morning for all of us. Big thanks to Tebs for putting up with my dung spitting. I didn't actually mean to hit him. And a big thank you to all of you, the viewers, for your wonderful questions and comments. I'm going to say goodbye now. Have a wonderful day and send you back across to Steph for the last few moments. Cheers, guys.
Now, I see that Jamie's laid down the challenge there and see if I can spit a piece of dung further than what she can. And I don't know, the first thing that comes into my mind is monkey see, monkey do, and I'm not going to be a monkey, I don't think. I'll have to decide on how much I want to put something else's dung in my mouth and then fling it out using explosive force with much wind and saliva. It's absolutely unappealing for me. But in any case, from myself and VM, we just want to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us today, and see you this afternoon.